Make no mistake, influencer marketing can and does work, but most brands totally mess it up. They treat it like random posts, random creators, and random results. Kristina Coughlin doesn't play that game at all. She's helped to drag influencer marketing out of the nice extra box and placed it right in the middle of how brands actually grow. Now, she's been in it since the early messy days when brands didn't really know what they were doing and creators were just figuring it out for themselves. Now she builds influencer strategies like a real system inside performance-driven brands where results actually matter. And in this episode, we're going to talk about why treating influencer marketing just like another channel burns budgets, and how everyone wins when brands stop trying to control every single word an influencer says, and what really separates influencer programs that scale from ones that die in a ditch. So if you want to learn about how influencer strategies actually work and use marketing campaign as a growth engine, then don't miss this episode of the Brandmaster Podcast. First and foremost, Kristina, thank you for taking the time to join us today, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it with you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no problem at all. Now, just to kind of give us a bit of a background, because we all have various different roads to get to where we are, because marketing, branding, it's such a diverse kind of road to the center. And we all come from kind of different backgrounds. Give us a bit of an idea as to how your journey started and how you ended up where you are doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, great question. I really fell into the influencer marketing space by accident. I was in financial services for many years, primarily sales leadership capacities, and I accidentally fell into the creator space as starting as a creator myself. So I was creating recipes. I was in the we'll call better for you food space, making gluten-free recipes, low sugar recipes based on this new diet lifestyle I was trying to live at the time. And what surprised me is that I ended up growing a little bit of an audience. So what we would consider a micro creator today. And then I started working with brands. So brands would reach out to me and say, hey, would you be interested in promoting our product? And started doing a lot of brand deals. And this is back in 2017, which now is almost like the stone age of influencer marketing at the time. And I was like, you know what? This is fascinating. This is super interesting. It was clearly something that was growing exponentially. And also I really genuinely enjoyed it. I was just completely fascinated by this ever-growing space. So I took the leap of faith and, I decided, you know what? I'm going to switch from financial services to focusing on being in the social space full time. Did not have a lot of translatable experience coming from financial services to social. So I built up my own consultancy shop at the time, working primarily with emerging brands to help support them with their social and influencer efforts, and then still also doing influencer work on the side. And that turned into, hey, this consultancy is awesome and this strategy is awesome, but we need more than that. We need the tactical execution of these strategies. And then it was like this aha moment of, oh yeah, I need to build an agency, right? That's what I really need to do here to align with the demand that I was getting. So I ended up building up a boutique agency, and primarily focused on influencer marketing, but also ended up extending into paid social and also affiliate and other services that worked really well alongside of influencer. Did that for multiple years. Learned so much, got the opportunity to work with emerging brands all the way up to enterprise brands and everything in between. And of course, got a ton of experience in entrepreneurship and building up a business. And anyone who's done that knows the trials and tribulations that go into that.
Mm.
And then back 3 years ago now, the Ad Parlor team, which is where I'm at today, asked if I wanted to come over there to help them build out their influencer marketing service and really grow it in a meaningful way. It was an exciting opportunity. So I decided to jump over to Ad Parlor, and I've been here now for about 3 years. And what I do is I'm responsible for the full P&L of Ad Parlor and the strategic direction of the business. Helped really pivot it from being what we were originally is a performance focused agency that also did influencer to an influencer marketing agency that also does performance media. And it's been just an amazing and exciting ride, and excited to be here and also see the evolution over the past few years in not only ad player, but just in the influencer space as a whole.
Yeah, it's a great story. It's that I actually see a lot of similarities to my story as well. Funnily enough, I was in financial services as well as a stockbroker, so I made that jump, cut my teeth, and kind of scraped my knees and my elbows and my face and everything else
Sure.
that could be scraped. And yeah, so it sounds like a similar journey there. But you, um, kind of like me as well, went into an area where it was still relatively unknown, and this kind of is still a little, for me, it's a blind spot in in the split when it comes to marketing, because we tend to think of marketing as it's either organic content creation or it's ad spend, and partnership strategies in general tend to kind of get overlooked. And there's some really low hanging fruit there, some nuggets of gold if you really understand it. So how how did you kind of build these processes out from nothing to be able to, first of all, offer a service and then kind of bring it to a bigger agency like Ad Parlor?
Yeah, and to your point, a lot of cuts and scrapes and learnings along the way, but a lot of it is just really aligning with what is the market telling you? What do they need? And I think that's one thing that I really focused on is those that were providing the demand and had the needs. What were the things that they needed? What was their pain points? What were their challenges? What were the things that they needed me to lean into more? And it's that really helped shape what the offering ended up becoming, and also ended up becoming really translatable from small SMB businesses all the way up to enterprise, knowing that they all have different challenges and different obstacles and things that they're overcoming. But also, a lot of the things are the same too, right? A lot of them all deal with bandwidth issues internally. Hey, we don't have enough team members realistically to manage this on our own. Performance challenges and making sure that they're hitting their goals. Leadership challenges of, hey, my leadership team wants me to do X. I have the ability to do Y with the skill sets that we have. We need to fill in that gap. And so a lot of those things are really translatable across a lot of different types of business tiers. And then you kind of figure out based on feedback that you get, how to keep improving that offering to make it best in class. And also reading up and doing a lot of research on the changes in the market, because one thing with influencer marketing is that change is constant. So pretty much since 2017, it is constantly changing, constantly evolving. It's continuing to do it. It's still not really yet quite that mature service offering. I think over the next couple of years, it likely will start getting to that point of maturity. But also evolving as the space evolves, right? And we're seeing different changes like creator amplification on connected TV, as an example, as a way to get creator content out further. We're starting different things that are evolving and changing over time, and to be able to be an early adopter and say, hey, you know what, let's test this out, let's learn from it and see how it goes, has also worked really well in being that translatable offering to ad parlor, and then also, really any type of agency model.
Yeah, and look, I've got some, pretty granular questions for you later on, which will go into, the emergence of AI influencers and, how engaging with them has come about. But really, so you have the understanding of the people in the room here and a lot of folks listening outside as well. There is a need to better understand where influencer marketing fits into the mix. So before we kind of go into the nitty gritty, give me your idea or your basic kind of understanding or description of influencer marketing as a discipline, where it sits inside partnership marketing generally, and where it sits inside the overarching umbrella.
Yeah. So what we're seeing, and this can definitely be very brand dependent, but for a lot of advertisers, what we're starting to see is they can either fits in under that PR umbrella and to your point, kind of pure play partnerships
Mm.
and earned media. Some organizations were really seeing it fit within digital marketing and paid media, knowing that influencer and paid media are really starting to go together really hand in hand as more of a paid strategy. And then for some, we're seeing it under and you're kind of referencing this earlier between organic and paid, we're seeing it in the organic umbrella, right? And then really seeing it under organic teams. And as we think about more of a owned content strategy. So and then some even larger advertisers were seeing it just as a standalone division of the company, obviously, if it's larger enough. So I'd say that's a unique challenge that as an agency we tend to see, is that depending on who you're talking to, they view influencer marketing a little bit differently. You know, some of them really view that as, how do we earn more creator content and how do we lean into this as more of a PR play? Others are like, how do we drive this as a true performance engine for our business? And some of them are thinking about it as more of a, how do we make this as a content machine? So we're constantly generating those diverse assets for us to repurpose across our owned and operated efforts. And then some are really thinking about it, and in my perspective, best case is really thinking about it from all three, because it does address all three. In an ideal situation, influencer marketing works in tandem with all of those strategies that a team is doing and not siloed, because it does impact PR, and influencers helping to support with PR efforts can be super powerful and impactful. It can be a content generation machine for owned and operated, and it also can be used as a paid strategy with the content repurposed as user-generated content for your paid efforts. So having having all of those work in conjunction with each other, we do see yields end up the strongest performance when they're all working closely together.
Yeah, it is quite unique from that perspective, as in, you know, it does tick the trifecta depending on what way it's used. I find it interesting that you said earlier that Ad Parlor has gone from, that performance based to influencer, and obviously I don't need to ask why that happened. You know, you follow the money, you follow the yellow brick road. That's obviously what's gone on in the background there. But in terms of the companies that you were dealing with before, there was obviously some kind of signs saying that companies tend to be more suited towards this, or we're tending to get more results from this based on the other services that we offer. Can you talk to me about the types of brands and businesses that would come to you, and then how they seemed to kind of fit snugly into the influencer space?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we were saying is, primarily in terms of those that have significant budgets to really do meaningful tests with influencers and are okay with doing that test, knowing that the ROAS or the performance may come over time, or may come from something that's not attributable directly through the influencer. So for example, going back to the earlier question, the influencer content may show up as far as attribution on paid media, or it may show up through traffic or click on social or something through that. So we see that the advertisers that have really strong knowledge base in terms of influencer marketing measurement is really in that large mid-tier and above. And they're the ones that are saying, yes, we want to use influencer marketing either for a performance engine, a PR engine, a branding engine, or maybe a combination of all of those things. And we want to create an always-on creator program in a meaningful way. So those are the ones that, from an ad parlor perspective, we definitely tend to focus more on. Though what we do see as far as that SMBs, or really that's the emerging brand or mid-market brand, is they'll do influencer marketing in a smaller scale and something that is a little bit scrappier. So they may really need to lean into more of that performance side of it, and maybe not have the opportunity to really focus more of it as a brand or a content generation machine, because they might not necessarily have the working capital to say, hey, if I get a few shout outs and I get a lot of brand awareness from that, that checks the box in terms of what we think is success from a KPI perspective. So we set up campaigns with some of those more emerging mid-market brands is going to be very different, knowing that they have less of the ability to do a lot of that testing and are really going to be more performance ROAS focused versus some of those larger brands that are thinking about it a little bit more holistically.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, hearing you talk about it and the the technical considerations behind it, you can see that with the right overarching strategy, it's got its place, like in almost any kind of setting. It really just depends on the situation that you have at hand and where you can kind of fit that in based on everything else that's going on. If if someone was coming to influencer marketing for the first time and they just know it as this thing, this, I know it exists. I know technically what it's about. You've got creators, you've got influencers, you've got micro influencers. They shout out your brand. This is how it works. But in terms of kind of the more nitty gritty processes of understanding, when a brand needs an influencer as part of their strategy, going out and sourcing the different types of influencers that could match with them. What does that kind of process look like as a kind of overarching structure?
Yeah, and I would say that is one of the biggest challenges of influencer marketing is the time intensiveness of executing a really well thought out influencer strategy. Because if you think about comparing that versus like paid social, you're going into a platform, you're setting up your audiences, you're setting up your targeting, your goal, your budgets, and you're kicking it off. Obviously, with influencer marketing, you're working with human beings at scale, which human beings are complicated. We're all complicated people,
Especially creator influencers.
especially creators that are creatives and sometimes think a little bit differently than business people who have specific goals that we have in mind. So it's a really intentional process that goes into the back end of a really strong creator strategy. And yes, you hit on some of it. And some of it is setting up a really strong brief, and it's also strong strategy that's going to set the tone for the rest of the campaign. Where I see a lot of advertisers struggling is they're going through the motions of doing the campaign process, but they're not necessarily intentional about why am I doing it this way. So I'm sourcing good creators, but are those creators going to be the right ones that are actually going to impact the performance of this campaign? Or are we working with them because they seem like they're good creators and they pass all of our vetting checks? So I usually kind of put it in the category of the three R's, right? Reach, relevance, results. Thinking about that when you first set up the campaign. So how are you going to drive a lot of those eyeballs and reach? Because you need reach for people to convert, right? You need to have eyeballs for people to ultimately buy your product or service. How are you going to take advantage of getting those eyeballs? Who's going to do it? What's the content medium? What's the platform? Where are you going to focus? Next is relevance. So who's going to be those culture champions that really are well aligned with the brand, but also are going to be really strong at driving those performance outcomes that you're looking for? Because if you're looking for someone with a strong call to action and you're working with a creator who generally does not do strong call to action content, there's a little bit of a miss there, right? If you're looking for a really strong storyteller, you need to find someone who's really, really good at strong storytelling and has a history of doing that exceptionally well. And then results, right? What is the attribution framework that you're going to put in place outside of just social? Are you using your source of truth? Is it GA4? Is it Adobe? Are you using Shopify links? Are you using affiliate links? So what else are you leveraging to ensure that you're really reviewing performance in a meaningful way? And also maybe brand lift studies, if you're thinking through more upper mid funnel, brand recall, favorability, comment sentiment, some of those other really important factors that determine, are people really resonating with the brand? Are they remembering the brand? And are we seeing an impact outside of just ROAS and some of those hard-hitting KPIs for a typical campaign? And putting all of those factors into place and then moving forward with the process of finding the right creators, sourcing them, vetting them, going through and making sure that brief is aligned with something that is meaningful and will give them the objectives of the campaign, those do's and don'ts, the meaningful things that they ensure we accomplish from it, but isn't a script that's like 10 pages that realistically the creators are never going to read. It's a 10 brief. I promise you, they will not ever read it. You're lucky if you can get 3 pages, maybe they'll read maybe that. Even that is a long shot. So keeping it concise to the point, something that they'll read, because I promise you what we see is that if it's too long, you'll get the same type of crappy content and you'll see a trend of like, this is consistently not what I'm looking for. Go back to the brief, redo it. And if you're getting that spot on brand aligned content in the first draft, chances are your brief is good.
Yeah.
And so the trials and tribulations of that, right? You get the brief, you get the content, you go through it, you provide that feedback, and content goes live. And then it's the measurement part. So how are people reacting to it? What's the performance of it? And also, how do we repurpose and amplify this content for driving more performance at scale, whether that's amplifying it cross partnership ads on paid social, amplifying it through connected TV, leveraging content for owned and operated, and making sure you're squeezing as much life out of that content as you can while you have it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm giggling at all of the marketing terminology being used in everything you say, because we're from a brand side of things, and there's this whole kind of brand versus marketing thing. One being kind of fluffy, but being the center point and the core, and the reason, and the other being the execution. The metrics and really what kind of drives it. And traditionally, typically, we would have more of the brand oriented side of things, but definitely I know because I've seen the shift myself, the need for brands to work directly with both sides, the brand and the marketing side of things. So my question to you, because I know that those who have their elbows deep in strategy get it. A lot on the execution side of things, whether they're in media buying, content creation, whatever it may be, they're not as connected to it. In terms of how you guys bridge brand strategy and then the marketing strategy, what do you have there? How do those conversations go with the brands that come to you? And do you get involved in helping them to kind of build up their brand strategy before going down the road of marketing strategy, or more specifically influencer strategy?
Absolutely. And it's a great point. And something that we're definitely seeing more of a convergence is between the brand and the marketing performance teams. Really, influencer marketing it tends to hover across both, because yes, it's a performance function, but it's very, very much a brand function. And really, when we're working with a lot of advertisers, the brand team has a huge impact as in how the influencer marketing campaign turns out, especially when it comes to that content and that creative strategy and the messaging of it. So what we typically do is we'll usually engage with that brand team first in those initial starting points of the campaign and the kickoff to understand what is the messaging that we're really trying to convey on this? What is that goal? What are those things that we want to lean into? And what are those things that we want to really lean away from? Of course, making sure from a brand safety perspective that we have all those parameters in place. And some of the brand teams will be pretty prescriptive in terms of what they're looking for. And some brand teams are the opposite. Some of them are like, you know what? You guys are great at influencer marketing and you know how to do this. How do you take these guardrails that we're going to give you and make that into something that's going to be really meaningful and tells a strong story for our brand? We do both, right? We'll take the, hey, you know what? Just execute on this great, or the, you know what? We want you to really set and guide what that content and branding strategy is going to look like. Share it to us for review and approval and run with it from there. Also great. And so sometimes what we'll do is we'll put together everything from big, giant, huge ideas to share with the brand team, all the way down to little tactical things that can improve the campaign performance and everything in between. And we usually share that even before we end up working with that client during the sales process, to ensure that they're really aligned and excited with some of the ideas that we put together. They may give us some feedback on it. Sometimes we massage it. Sometimes they love that initial plan that we put together. And then we have that V1 starting point to kick off with. And that helps inform the campaign brief that we ultimately put together for the creators. The brand team is usually the team that'll do the review and approval of that brand brief to ensure it is really genuinely aligned with the brand. And also they're including any of those necessary nuances that as an agency we may not be aware of. So it might be disclosures or specific guidelines or legal requirements or really big messaging that we need to convey or a specific call to action. And they're going to help us build that out and include that in. And then that's what we do as we have those conversations with creators. We ensure that we're really acting as a representation of the brand and speaking to the creators as if we are that strong partner, because at the end of the day, when the creators are working with the agency, they're still viewing it as working with the brand. Mm-hmm. So the more we understand the brand and become that strong partner, the better we're going to have strong partnerships with the creators. And that's ultimately going to yield really strong content. And then as we're going through the draft submission process from a legal perspective, the brand also has a lot of feedback in that part of the process as well.
So I'm curious then, in terms of how you birth a strategy, let's say, is that done in a traditional workshop environment with the client and the creator, or are you guys the buffer that works directly with the client in a workshop environment and then briefs the influencer? How does the strategy itself come to life?
Great question. And it's usually the latter. So what we'll do is we end up playing really that middleman between the advertiser and the creator. So our team will workshop the big ideas, the strategies, the plans, and then we'll share that with the client for review and approval. And then once we finalize that, then we go out to our creator network and see which creators, one, are a fantastic brand fit for that particular brand and campaign, but two, are really aligned with that campaign strategy and that concept that we're putting together, because we want to make sure that the creators are equally as excited about it and we're finding the right creators that are a good fit for that. And what we do find too is the process with the creators is also very collaborative in an ideal state. We love having that strong collaboration opportunity with the creators, because some of them may come to us and say, hey, love this brief, amazing. But what I see works really well with my audience specifically is ABC. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think the advertiser would be aligned in that? We love when creators do that, because 9.9 times out of 10, when a creator does that, the content does amazing, because they know their audience best. And so we'll take the initial guardrails and the initial plan that we'll get from the brand, and then we create a really custom concept specific to that creator and that audience. We'll share that back with the brand team to make sure, hey, is this aligned with what you're looking for? This is going to work well for this creator specific audience. Are you aligned? Most of the time, the advertiser will say, yes, if this really works, it's really aligned with our guardrails, but also leaned into the creator's audience and what they do best. Let's go for it. And that's ultimately what kicks off the draft submission and creation process.
Yeah, I really love that as well, because look, at the end of the day, you're engaging an influencer to do what they do, and if you try and cut their wings, then you're essentially cutting your own wings, because you're paying them for the influence they have. And the people who are influenced by them are influenced by who they are, what they do, how they speak. And as long as it aligns with the brand's message, and they're kind of clear on guardrails as a general point, then that kind of creative freedom, I would imagine, generates the best results.
Absolutely. The more creative freedom you can give, and this enterprise brands tend to struggle with this because they're definitely under more scrutiny with stronger legal teams.
Yeah, of course.
But the ability, when we do see this sometimes with enterprise brands, but especially this is a huge benefit to the non-enterprise brands. So the SMB brands who do have that flexibility to allow creators to really create content that works well for their audience. It absolutely outperforms content where creators are essentially given what is just short of a cue card because consumers can see right through that. They can see when a creator is clearly just spitting off something that they were told to say in a brief, and it's not coming from their actual words or the way that they speak, the way that they talk, the way that they typically create content. The best performing content is when the creators have that flexibility. Yes, they have their guardrails and things that they have to achieve, but they have the flexibility to create content that they know is really going to work well for their audience. It really fits into the typical type of content medium that they normally would create. And they can drive really that strong storytelling because when the content comes off as very organic versus clearly sponsored, it's really aligning with the value that their audience typically expects from them, which is what really influencer marketing is all about. It's really that word of mouth marketing from someone that you know, like, and trust. So when brands have the opportunity to really lean into that, the content performs extremely well.
Yeah, yeah, and look, that's what you would expect because at the end of the day, you know, the creators out there who have the attention of your audience, you know, if their audience, you know, looks up to them and you know sees them as where they are, and if they shout your brand and you know they do it in their voice, then you know you've got some hungry audiences out there waiting to kind of hear that message. So on that point, what kind of ROI are you guys seeing when compared to, let's say, the previous work that you were doing? Obviously, you've kind of pushed all in on influencer marketing. No doubt the ROI kind of told you to do that. Typically speaking, what are you seeing in terms of ad spend there?
Yeah. So in terms of, ad spend and ROI, so what we're seeing is coming from a performance media shop to an influencer marketing shop, we're seeing an interesting mix of different media spends depending on advertisers. What we're seeing is some advertisers are really leaning more into influencer. We're saying some might be spending up to 50% of their media mix into influencers, which is
Wow.
incredible. And then we're seeing some that are still in the initial kind of testing, learning how do we incorporate this well into our media mix. So we're definitely seeing quite a variation. Enterprise is definitely more leaned in, but we're definitely seeing more adoption in some of the more emerging markets and emerging brands in those SMBs. But we've done a lot of work in terms of that performance comparison of creator versus maybe more of a traditional paid media type of execution. And what we're seeing is that consumers really, really like that authentic user generated type of content. So when we put user generated content and amplify it across paid social versus the business as usual branded assets that we're also deploying on social on the same platform, a lot of the times we're seeing that influencer content completely outperform the branded assets.
Mm.
Now, it also depends on how good the creative is across both, right? Across both influencer and brand. But when you do have that really, really strong influencer creative, it generally does outperform. And what we're also seeing is that we ran a couple studies on this. There's no correlation between size of an influencer and how well it'll perform on paid.
Mm.
So you can have a micro creator that just creates really, really good content that might not be a huge price point. If they do that really strong content, you deploy it across paid, it's likely going to drive more efficient results and a higher ROAS than even just traditional branded content that you're doing in-house with a in-house studio team or a creative agency that's probably going to cost a lot more money to create
Yeah.
and might drive the same results or maybe a little bit less depending on how strong the creative is.
Yeah, I'm actually interested in you guys in terms of ad parlor, and just a shout out to all the audience here. If you've got some questions, I'm gonna kind of open it up in a few minutes. So kind of think about what questions you might have for Christina. But I've got a couple of questions in relation to your agency setup and you know how you guys have created this space for you. First and foremost, you know, who is your target and what's your strategy in terms of going out there and attracting the right audience, and what does ad parlors funnel itself look like?
Yeah, so from our own sales perspective and finding net new advertisers, what does essentially that look like?
Yeah, yeah. So going out and finding the right brands who need influencer marketing, and of course, there's the other side of that because you're essentially a market, aren't you? You're creating the supply and the demand and building up the portfolio of creators on the other side. So that's actually a really really interesting model, and it's something that I'm super interested in, just in terms of the dynamics and how it works. So how do you guys approach that?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple ways. So, one, we have an outbound team. So, our outbound team does a lot of cold email outbound.
Mm,
We usually try to align that with an event or a conference that we're attending. So, I am a huge fan of just in person interaction whenever possible. I think it just drives, as we all know, there's a huge difference between meeting someone virtually and then meeting someone in person, having a coffee or having a drink, having a meal, and just being able to chit chat on a personal level.
So give me an example of one of these events that you would go to before we go on.
Yeah. So, well, one example is conferences. So, we'll do, for example, we're going to do Creator Economy Live in 2026. We're doing NRF in 2026, Shop Talk, E-Tail, West and East is a few examples. So, we'll do some that are more vertical focused and then
Mm.
some that are more broader digital marketing, influencer marketing type of
So
focused
would you go to Adobe Max, for example?
That's definitely one that we would look into.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely. Possible is another one that we're going to be doing next year. So there's quite a few that we're tackling, and sometimes we'll focus on the conference itself and just meeting folks at the conference. Sometimes we'll do speaking engagements, just as a way of driving more of that thought leadership. And then also we'll do sometimes events surrounding the conferences. So maybe it is a smaller, more intimate dinner with some of the folks that are in our ideal customer profile, which is generally the CMOs and VP of marketing, or really any marketing decision maker at the brand, who has the authority of how the influencer marketing spend is being utilized. And sometimes even lower than that. Sometimes it is that marketing manager that has a ton of pull, who's that person in that day-to-day role who
Mhm.
manages up quite a bit. And they're also critically important into that process too. So we'll get those folks into a room, have dinner, have a meal, chat with them, and just have a good time, and just being able to build that relationship and showcase also our team. We love having also our operations and our account folks going to those conferences too. So you're not just meeting the salespeople, but you're actually meeting the people behind the scenes that are responsible for the execution of that work and breaking bread with them.
Mm.
So we do a lot of that, and we see a lot of success from really doing those in-person interactions. And then other things is really on the earned media side. So doing thought leadership, doing things like this, right? Just showing up, having conversations with people, providing content to people. And one thing that we're really, really trying to lean into to Ad Parlor is we talk about how influencer marketing is so critical, but we have to live what we say. So our whole senior leadership team is creating content now on LinkedIn and acting as their own form of influencers for the Ad Parlor brand, so we can really live what we say that we do.
Which is why we have you on the show today.
Exactly.
Strategy in motion.
Yes, 100%. Perfect
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, no, it's obviously from our side of the table, the brand strategy side, when it comes to translating brand strategy, which tends to be fluffy, they're guidelines, it's an approach. It's not now we have a strategy, now we have the steps that we need to take to go out and put this brand on the map. So there is a translation that needs to happen. And that's kind of what I have an increasing interest in because, for me, branding and marketing is the yin and the yang. You really can't have one without the other, yet there is this division between the two that doesn't really make any bloody sense. But I digress. In terms of the when you onboard a new client and you kind of you sit in the room with them or you sit on a call with them, in terms of the process then of of understanding what it is that they want to achieve, matching them to the correct influencer, and then kind of getting that campaign up and running. What would you say would be the kind of the key to making sure that all of the ducks align, to making sure that you match the right influencer with the right brand, you get you define the right brief to give your studio the best opportunity at returning a high ROI for your client.
Yeah, great question. And really, what we see is the number one thing that drives the best performance with our clients is when they give us those guardrails of, hey, this is what we need. This is the KPIs we're looking for. These are the do's and don'ts. This is what we need at a minimum from your team as far as a partnership perspective. But they also give us, similar to how we give creators, they give us that creative flexibility to say, you're the team of experts. We
Hmm.
hired your team for a reason because you're really, really good at what you do. And you do this all day, every day across multiple advertisers. So we want your best practice. We want your big ideas. We want your thoughts on the creator selection process. We have the ideas and we have thoughts that we are bringing to the table, but we also want to get your thoughts and ideas as well. So when it's that truly collaborative process, it's huge correlation between that and extremely strong campaign performance.
Mm.
Where we tend to see overly prescriptive advertisers, and some of them are stuck to that and they don't have a choice, they have to be. It can be challenging because you're not necessarily using best in class strategies or best in class creators. You're very limited to the scope and what you have to do for that particular advertiser. And then we have other advertisers that just don't know what they want. And that's sometimes challenging too, because you're trying to figure out in real time what they're
Mm.
actually looking for. The best case scenario is when you do have that strong collaboration, because then they'll say, hey, you know what? We've really tested XYZ type of creators in the past. Maybe it's tech creators. We've really tested tech creators and we love tech creators. And then we might say, well, you know what? We've seen lifestyle creators work really well for this type of campaign and program. Here's a few examples of ones that we love. This is why we love them. We worked with them in the past and they're incredible. What do you think? Right? Can we do some tests here and see how it goes? We'll work with the tech creators too, but can we test them in some other different verticals? And they'll go, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. Let's test, right? We'll do that test and then we'll see that lifestyle creator crushes it and does
Mm.
extremely well. And then the client's like, amazing, this was great, right? And then trust continues to get formed. So when you have that strong advertiser agency trust there, it's pure magic. And we definitely see that through the results of the campaigns constantly.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine, and I know that you're kind of big on storytelling, when it comes to creators, and you're kind of preaching to the choir there because brand storytelling is core to the communication strategy within our ethos, and as you know, there's all different angles that you can come from, whether it's the founder story or the audience journey, whatever it may be. What would a typical kind of campaign look like for you, and how do you kind of weave through the storytelling of the brand through the creator? What would that campaign look like?
Yeah. And some of the best ways that we're able to weave that storytelling in is when we're actually able to have real conversations with the creators. And sometimes this goes back to having a more curated creator campaign versus a large scale creator campaign. Some advertisers are focused on, hey, let's get as many people talking about the brand as possible. Great. We absolutely can do that. But sometimes you do miss out on that strong storytelling ability when you don't have that real life conversation with the creator and do that collaboration and that brainstorming. And how do we take this brief and how do we actually bring it to life in a really meaningful way? That usually requires a conversation, us talking on the phone, us talking on Zoom, us talking to them in person, and having multiple conversations of, hey, this is what the brand wants to generate, and here's our initial ideas that we're putting in front of you, and how do we create this and turn this into a true masterpiece based on what works really well for you and your audience and your storytelling capabilities. And that's the best case, is when we're able to have that really high touch model with the creators, because they're going to ask us questions in real time, and we're answering their questions, and they're brainstorming, and you can tell their wheels are turning while we're talking to them. And then they'll say, well, hey, what about XYZ? And we're like, oh, I love that. And they're like, well, actually, what about this? And we're kind of riffing off each other. And then we come up with this really amazing story. We share it back to the brand. Almost most cases, the brand ends up pretty excited about it. And that's where we see it really come to life. And when we get to be able to lean into that storytelling component of it, and it really is that content that provides value. It's, I kind of say it's the Eve, right? It's either entertaining, it's valuable, or it's educational. Ideally, it's at least one of those. Best case, it's two or three of those things when producing content. And when you're able to have that high touch model with that creator is when you really see that storytelling come through.
And do you guys work directly with other agencies? So let's say, for example, there'll be a marketing agency or a brand agency that don't really touch influencer marketing. Do you have those kind of relationships set up, or some kind of referral system where you act as the influencer head for other agencies? And what kind of budgets would you be talking about?
Absolutely. We do that. I would say about 50% of our business model is through
Okay.
other agencies. And about 50% of it is direct to the brand, because you're right. There's a lot of agencies, and we see that across full service agencies, PR agencies, Amazon agencies, branding agencies, even some more digital focused like website design agencies. There's been quite a few that come to us and they're like, we do not do influencer. We don't plan on ever doing influencer. It's not our forte, but our clients are interested in it. And we don't want to lose out on this client opportunity because it's not something that we do in house. And we basically act as an extension of that agency's team. And we'll come in, we'll work as that true partner to them, and we'll manage the whole campaign execution. And we do a really strong referral program for agencies that we do work with in that capacity. And then some of them might just add a management fee on top of our scope, and we contract directly with that agency versus contracting with that client. We're pretty flexible because we find that influencer is a completely different process from a lot of other marketing strategies, and being able to have another agency in your corner that specializes in it, it can be extremely beneficial for really all parties involved.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other discipline that's more like the Wild West as the creative kind of industry, because you've got really at its core, we are creative people. So the structures that one person would come up with would be different to another structure. One agency would look completely different to another. So it's part of what we love about it, but it's also part of why it's such a mystery as well. Um, I'm I've thrown out questions before. Usually, I've gotten hands up at this stage. I don't have any hands up. I'm guessing that's because we're so left of center of where we usually are, and getting into the kind of nitty gritty of influencer marketing people are kind of sitting here on the sidelines out of intrigue and curiosity more than anything. So if nobody has any questions, I've got a couple more to close off. And because we haven't got any hands up at this stage, I'll probably just plow through. So in terms of the if somebody is at a starting point now where they're putting together their own strategy, let's say they have a brand strategy, they know who their brand is, and they're looking at their marketing strategy and asking the question, okay, should I go, paid ads? Should I go content creation? And then there's this kind of, you know, forgotten little stepsister in the corner called influencer marketing that doesn't get a look in, but they're curious. What questions would you ask a brand or a client like that to determine whether or not they're ready or suitable for that kind of campaign?
Yeah, a great question. And I would say first is their appetite to budget and to test. And actually, I realized, you mentioned that in the previous question about budgets. I would say a general good starting point test budget is probably about $25,000 all in for what we'll call a 3-month creator campaign. So that's
Hmm.
not 25 per month, it's 25 over the course of 3 months,
Yep.
is usually what we recommend as a starting point. Now, could you do it probably a little scrappier for maybe a little bit cheaper in-house? Probably. But especially bringing on that agency partner, knowing that our goal is to make sure that they see that strong performance results. That's usually a strong starting point to start with. So first is asking, do they have the appetite to really invest into influencer marketing in a meaningful way in which they're going to be able to see some tangible results over that 3-month period? Then it's understanding, what are their goals? What are those definitions of success? If they need help workshopping what those things could be, we can help support them with that. But usually it's hey, we need sales and this is our benchmark and this is what we're looking for. It could be, hey, we're focused on really increasing our shelf space with our retail partners. And we need to drive more traffic to our retailer site and get more add to carts. It might be, we just want more traffic to our D2C site. And some of them might just be focused on more upper funnel, brand recall, eyeballs, engagement, positive comment sentiment. Maybe they just went through a challenge and they've gotten some bad PR and they need to course correct on that and get some good PR and really focus on more of that sentiment component of it. And then also understanding from there, where are their current areas of focus? Are there certain platforms that they're focused on more than others that they want to start off with and really tackle first? I usually suggest starting with one platform, tackling that before going on to the other platform. You can always syndicate content. So say syndicate it from Instagram to TikTok, but really double down on, say, an Instagram, depending on where your target audience is first, before moving on to just jumping to a YouTube, for example. And then also, what is their target audience? So who are they looking to get in front of? Because of course, the target audience will ultimately depend on the next question, which is the type of creators that we want to work with. Because someone could be a creator in a specific vertical, but doesn't necessarily mean that aligns perfectly with the target audience that they have in the back end. So we want to figure out, okay, what's that target audience? And then what creators do we have that we can work with that actually aligns really well with the target audience, and also with any type of content needs they may have and other type of secondary type of KPIs that are important to them as well. Because we usually have a lot of clients that are focused on really making this a branding play too, of how do we get that diverse user generated content that we can repurpose for multiple use cases. And they might have a specific content strategy in place that we'll want to take into consideration as well.
And is there a darling platform of the influencer space?
I would say Instagram continues to still be the darling platform, though TikTok is quickly becoming a bigger and bigger player across really all audience demos. It used to be, that was for the younger Gen Z type of demo. That's really changed. And we're seeing increasingly more older demographics on TikTok. And with the addition of TikTok shops, in the convergence of commerce media and affiliate and creator, it's caused a world in which an influencer can introduce a product and close the sale of a product within one post, within one ecosystem. So TikTok is definitely changing the game there with TikTok Shop. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time.
That actually reminds me of a question that I did forget to ask earlier, and that's in relation to the partnership setups. Because there's many different ways. We're in the creative space at the end of the day. So one partnership with one creator might be completely different to another. In terms of typical setups that you see, what would be the go-to in terms of remuneration for an influencer and how you would set up those structures? What are the let's say top 1, 2, 3 structures, and what's the go-to?
Yeah, so it really depends on that term of the length of the campaign and what we're going for. So for example, we might have clients that work with us on a seasonal tentpole event versus some that are working with us always on. What we generally like to do in terms of the way we operate with creators is, if we're doing an initial test with them, we'll do initial couple posts with a creator. We'll set up an agreement with the creator with usage rights and the do's and don'ts and the scope of work and all of the terms that are needed in the agreement. And then we'll do those 2 posts just to allow us to get enough data and information and figure out, okay, is this a strong performing creator? Are they a good partner? Were they great to work with? if they really check all those boxes, then what we love to do is then move them into more of what we call a longer term brand ambassador type of program, where
Mm,
that might be we work with them on multiple posts, maybe multiple content mediums, depending on what the brand's looking for. And maybe it's over the course of like 6 months. Maybe it might be 3 months, maybe 12 months, depending on the scope of work that we have with the advertiser. And then we have those brand ambassadors that are driving that always on strategy, that are continuing to move their audience further down that decision making funnel while we're consistently bringing on net new creators to test at the same time.
mm.
And a lot of times we might have different types of partnership models. So, for example, we're working with a really major cruise liner right now. And some of those partnerships may be, hey, you're about to go on a cruise ship with your family and document the entire cruise experience and get back to us and create content on the boat, which is very different than someone who's going to get a can of soup shipped to them and they're going to make a homemade recipe ahead of the holidays and talk about their heritage and why that can of soup brings back those special memories to them this time of the year. So a lot of them are very custom based on what that type of activation and engagement looks like with the client, and then you're the creators around that.
Yeah, I've actually been approached a few different times by different brands, but like even with YouTube, I didn't want to advertise because I was protective of my audience not having to watch too many ads. But I would imagine different influencers have their own kind of guidelines as well as to the
Oh yeah.
type of brand that they would work with, and they have their own conditions, even though they're the ones being approached. Um, what have you seen in terms of you know um, influencers out there, or mismatched partnerships, or things gone wrong? What's a parting story you have for us?
Oh yeah, it's a great question because there's always a ton of them in the influencer space. You know, what we tend to find is a typical response rate for a creator campaign might be somewhere between, if it's an unknown brand, it might be closer to 10% response rate from creators, even if there's monetary compensation involved. If it's a more well-known brand that's very well liked by the creator community, it might be somewhere closer to 30-50%. But still, a lot of creators do not respond if it's something that they're not interested in, or will tell us, hey, this isn't really aligned with something my audience loves. I'm going to pass on that, which I never mind a creator doing because it's showing that they have integrity and they generally care about what their audience cares about, and also making sure it's really aligned with their core values. I will absolutely reach out to that creator again if you showcase that you have strong integrity with their audience. And we do have sometimes situations where a creator will take on an opportunity and maybe they probably shouldn't have, because there are things where they'll get overloaded with campaigns. This happens a lot in Q4 this time of year, where creators overbook themselves. They are definitely creatives, not always business people. They'll get a little too busy and then they'll say, well, you know what, this is my lower paying partnership, so yeah, I'm going to have to back out. And that's always tough for either an advertiser or an agency, because thankfully as an agency we almost always have backups in place ready to go, because we
Nice.
know there's going to be some attrition with
Yeah.
any creator campaign that we do. A grandma's going to die, something is going to happen in which we need to pivot. So we'll quickly have a backup ready to go and get them live. But yes, there's been times we've had plenty of stories where creators can't have backed out for logical reasons. Maybe they didn't even like the product and they didn't feel comfortable posting about it, which is also fair. And then we've also gotten some pretty crazy reasons why people have backed
Yeah.
out.
Creators with influence is a colorful space. Let's just say that. I can imagine the stories in the background. Christina, it's been super interesting. It's kind of opened the door to an area that's still unknown, even to pros in the marketing and branding space. So to kind of get an inside look into how you guys do things, and how your agency operates has been super interesting. If people want to learn more about you guys, or to follow you, what's your best channel?
Yeah, so you can check us out www.adparlor.com. And also for me, LinkedIn. So linkedin.com/in/Kristina Coughlin. So basically just my full name. Try to keep it simple. So yeah, if anyone ever has any questions or wants to reach out to me directly, wants to speak influencer marketing, always happy to chat.
Yeah, it's clear that you're passionate about it, so no doubt those conversations could go anywhere. Um,
Oh,
thank thank you, Christina. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll be in touch when this goes to the wider audience, and no doubt I'll see you in the feed.
sounds great. Thanks
Thanks,
all.
Christina. See you guys. Thanks all. Bye bye. We really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to learn more brand strategy techniques to level up your skills, make sure you check out brandmasteracademy.com. There's plenty of free resources and premium content for you to download and get you going. If you'd like to join our Facebook group full of like-minded brand strategists, all learning from each other, then find us by searching for the Brand Strategy Community, where you can find exclusive content for members as well. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to give us an honest review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listened, and make sure you tune in for the next episode of the Brandmaster Podcast.